With all the hype Metroidvania games get, I'm shocked Dandara isn't being pointed to as one of the games you should have played in 2018. Hollow Knight's second release on Switch is getting more fanfare, and that's crazy. It's disappointing. Dandara should be getting a lot more attention. It's definitely one of the more interesting Metroidvanias I've played, and that's because of the movement system. Dandara can only stand on salt, so she has to leap about from salt spot to salt spot. What's even crazier is that there's no gravity, there's no real up, so you can hop from any wall to any wall, and the game is nice enough to rotate the camera. And just to reiterate, there's no walking. You must jump between walls. And that is until you get hit by an enemy and then sort of just float there. The floating's okay. The point is, this makes moving around in Dandara super interesting. Jumping around a room filled with enemies can get a little crazy. The game stretches your attention to the limits when trying to attack and dodge projectiles. I mean, it can't get too crazy or else it would be impossible. Having a shit ton of stuff flying around you while you need to bounce around the room would be too much to keep track of at once. But late in the game, it does get serious. I found some rooms to be easier to damage boost through. Although it's funny how slow Dandara is. While you can zip around between walls, the attacks are slow. Dandara has a slow charge before she can fire, which means you have to stick and move to attack. Enemies have a long delay between their attacks to give you a chance to set up, so you'll get pretty good at bouncing around and looking for an angle of attack. Moving quickly is key to having enough time to actually get an attack in. A few times, I've screwed up the timing and missed my opportunity. It's more like a dance between Dandara and the enemies, where everyone is polite and takes turns attacking each other. And so the game is difficult, but Dandara doesn't leave you high and dry. Luckily, there are camps around the map that once visited, you'll respawn there. The camps aren't close, so you really do want to avoid death, but if you do die, you'll leave your salt you're carrying behind, which is a pain in the ass because you will probably want it. Dandara's corpse will stay there, and once touched, you'll regain all the salt, but if you die again, you'll lose it forever. But why would anyone bother going back and getting the salt at all? Well, salt is how you upgrade Dandara. You can increase the amount of hearts you have, or how many hearts the health flask refills. Absolutely necessary if you expect to get anywhere. However, keep in mind that the amount of uses on the flask is actually an upgrade that's scattered around the world in chests. Anyway, they're obviously taking some ideas from Dark Souls or Hollow Knight, with the camps, flask, salt, and retrieving your body. But if it works there, why not borrow? So there's some backtracking, but it's not too bad. There's some great areas that are changed for the second trip through. An item completely changes the map and opens up new areas, as you would expect from any Metroidvania. Also, some enemies die permanently, which really helps make it a bit easier and gives a certain feeling of accomplishment as you go back through an area. Some other points to keep in mind. First, there's something going on with the difficulty curve, as I had a hellish time with the end of the game. For most of the game, it was tough, but not insurmountable. However, at the end, it got so difficult, I almost gave up, especially the final boss. At this point, I know it's not impossible, but it took so many tries, I was on my last nerve. I played for a total of 6 hours, and I swear the last 2 of those were just fighting the final boss on repeat. That's probably an exaggeration, though. Although you probably expect me to say the final boss should be easier, but no. I think the earlier game needs to be more difficult. It's more about smoothing the difficulty spike than making the game easier. Second, the power bar is kind of a pain in the ass. It limits you from using too many special items, and yeah, that's a standard game element. Yet having to refill it with an item that takes time to use is more difficult than expected. As I mentioned, you have an opportunity to take one action before you have to move, and using an action to refill that power is a difficult one to do. I can't say if the intention was to limit power-up usage, but that's definitely what happened. I barely used my special attacks at all. Finally, the story is a bit muddled. There's some salt, Dandara is trying to save the world, but what's the overall message? It's a little bit about freedom, but there's not enough background given to really make sense of it. You meet some random characters that are polite enough to Dandara, but why? I mean, really, what is the deal with the salt? Why salt? What is the point of the salt? I beat the game and I still don't understand. The final boss is introduced only at the end of the game, so I have no feelings at all towards him. I just another obstacle to get through the game. There's no reason to be beating him. Is he the evil person? Is he ruining the salt? Is he making it taste bad? I don't know. This is the opposite of something like Iconoclasts that took time to build up the world with reoccurring characters. I guess Dandara's focus is the mechanics. Overall, Dandara is a game I liked a lot. Story schmory, the mechanics are solid and it's quite difficult. I also really enjoyed the art style of the game. I feel accomplished after having conquered the game. It's a smaller, more precise game than others in the genre, and the movement mechanics really make it stand out. If you like Metroidvania games, I absolutely think you should seek it out, and let me know what you think.
Hey, thanks for watching. I never know exactly what to say in these outros, but I really appreciate you watching. And just letting you know that the Steam Curator thing actually has more than just the YouTube videos in it. So if you want more of what I think about other games that I might not necessarily make a video for, consider checking that out. Thanks.